Hello, welcome back to the Arturia Profit video series. Today we're dealing with filters, and I generally find the best way to demonstrate filters is with the use of a sawtooth wave, because they're just great, really flexible workhorse waves. Okay, there's a sound. That's all of the frequencies of the sawtooth wave. The reason it's all of the frequencies is because with this template 1 oscillator preset, the filter is actually set to a maximum envelope. What do we mean by that? Well, I've got this tab over here called filter envelope. This draws a shape that's going to be applied to the filter over time. And as you can see, the filter is actually set to fully on. So by engaging the envelope to the maximum extent, we don't really have a filter to play with. It doesn't matter what I do with the cutoff knob. The envelope is basically overriding that and maximizing the frequencies that are allowed through. If I just for a moment turn the envelope off, thrown that away, and now we're dealing with a pure filter. We have a cutoff and a resonance in classic low pass filter mode. And now we can throw stuff away. And we also have a resonance value. So I've done a completely separate video on resonance in low-pass filters or filters generally, and I'll send you a link to that. But basically it accentuates the frequencies around the cutoff point and makes them louder, and it actually slightly attenuates or reduces the frequencies on both sides as well. There's dark physics voodoo going on. Basically you get that spike. It can become pretty unpleasant. At that point there, do you hear that sharp spike? And you can see it on span as well. That's the point at which the filter begins to what's called self-oscillate. Again, it's a little bit of a technical thing, but the filter itself generates its own sine wave, adds that into the mix. That's why you have that sudden leap in value in amplitude, that particular frequency value, because the filter is contributing a brand new energy source to the signal, and it suddenly spikes up on the meter. Now the Profit 5 only had a low pass filter, but the VS doesn't. It's got 4 different filters. We switch to high pass mode. Now if I turn cutoff all the way up, we don't hear any sound, because we've basically thrown away all of the low frequencies to the point where we've thrown them all away. If I bring the cutoff back, we begin to reintroduce more and more low frequencies until eventually, with no cutoff, we've let them all through. So low pass and high pass are inverted versions of each other, depending on whether you want to throw the low stuff away or the high stuff away. Band pass is like a moving dome, if you like, that will travel through the frequency range. Let's see that. Turn all the resonance off for now. So you get this slopey kind of thing, and the cutoff frequency determines which frequencies are allowed through. Becomes easier to see when we reintroduce resonance. You get a much more accentuated steepness of curve on both sides. That's the difference between a bandpass filter and the other two that we've just looked at, because it operates on both high and low frequencies. It's throwing stuff away on both sides. Has a very sharp, kind of nasty nasal sound. Band reject is exactly the opposite. It's often called a notch filter, and we're basically going to cut a V out of the frequency curve. Let's see that. You can see the notch, they're travelling through the wave. And as I alter the resonance value, you're going to see that V widen and tighten. So those are our 4 basic filter types. Let's go back to LPF, good old LPF. Now we'll reintroduce the envelope. So as things stand at the moment, with a slightly more reasonable resonance, got that kind of thing. Let's do something interesting with it over time using our envelope. So just like the amplifier envelope, we have a 5-point graph, or you could call it an ADDSR envelope if you want. 2 independent decay phases basically. So if I draw some interesting shapes, I need to reintroduce the envelope. As things stand at the moment, we don't get any envelope because the envelope amount is at 0. Turn that all the way up. So we're going to start off with a very low grumbly sound. It'll get to the point where it's letting all the frequencies through, pull them all back away, let them all back out again, and then settle down at a sustain point where all of the frequency is being let through. While I'm doing that, I'll then mess with the cutoff knob, and you'll see that the cutoff knob at that point is taken out of the equation. The envelope is overriding the effect. Doesn't matter what I do with this. If I pull the envelope amount back, now I do have control over the cutoff. So the envelope amount is basically determining how much modulation using this shape here is going to be applied to the base cutoff value, so they interact with each other. 50% envelope is actually a pretty good place to work with, where you get the effects of the envelope driving over time, but you can still dynamically work with the cutoff as well. And the interaction between those two things can be really interesting. Just like with our amplifier envelope, we can send that on a journey. I've chosen 0 to 3 there and back again each time. I'll randomly pick 1 to 3, so it's basically going to do this V continuously. See what that sounds like. Pretty straightforward stuff. And obviously we can control this graph with all of these values down here, which are in milliseconds, and also determine our levels if we want. That's the filter section done. You might be thinking that we're going to deal with the LFOs next, and you're kind of right, but in order to talk about them, we're also going to need to talk about the modulation matrix. It's not terrifying. Don't be overwhelmed by the way it looks. It's really pretty intuitive, pretty easy to use. We'll deal with that in the next video. Thanks very much for watching. Hope to see you then.